Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. We have a very special guest with us today. His name is Doug Hunter. I'll introduce him in a moment. And let me get us up on the screen here so I can do that. Jonathan Phillips is here with me as usual, and Doug Hunter is here as well. We would love to hear from you. So please say hi. Please say where you're from. Anything that will let us know. And we know we're on a delay, so it's going to take a second, but we would love to hear from you. So please throw something in the chat for us. Also, any questions that you have for us or for Doug, please feel free to put them into the chat throughout the presentation, and we will answer them at the end. Make sure that we're all in the right place. This event is for mid and senior level professionals considering what may be their next best move, or maybe in the middle of a job search. I'm very happy to introduce to you today Doug Hunter. Doug is an experienced marketing leader. He's worked at high VP, SVP, EVP levels in the marketing space, particularly with a focus on the technology sector. And he's here for a specific reason today, and that is that he is currently in a job search. So like many of you, he is facing a lot of the pressures and ups and downs that go along with that activity. However, he also conducted a job search recently. So more this last search, he was laid off. Prior to that, the same thing. He conducted a job search. It was successful, and he got his most recent job. And for that effort, he was featured on a podcast called Max List, I think it was.
Yes.
And I think he has a lot to offer to this group, and that is why he is here with us today. Hello, Doug.
Hello, Jason. Hello, Jonathan.
Glad to have you.
So tell us a little bit about how your search is going.
Yeah, the search is going pretty well. I was telling you right before this, it's very different than the last search because the last search was during the pandemic. So all of the networking and everything else was virtual. And this round, a lot of stuff is still live, though with the rise of remote work, there's still a lot of opportunities out there that aren't in town that are virtual again. So it's going well. And I'm excited to share some of the things that I've learned through a couple of good searches here.
Good. Excellent. How long have you been searching for?
I've probably been searching about a month and a half, 2 months for this search.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right. So probably hopefully midway, right? I mean, I think that would be.
I am certainly hoping, but I think the key isn't to take the first job, but the key is to find the right job.
Yeah.
So there's those jobs that you apply for, you're kind of like, yeah, I could do this. And then there's a job like one I applied for last night. It's like, oh, this excites me. The overlap between what I can do and what they're looking for and what I love to do was really high. So yeah. I'm holding out for the right job here.
All right. Good. Okay. So let's get to the heart of the matter here. Jonathan, you haven't said anything yet. That's a little unusual. Is there anything that you want to ask Doug or contribute?
No, this is great. Happy to certainly work with a lot of people that are going through the similar thing that you are, Doug. Mm-hmm. And takes a little bravery to get up in the morning and run at the job market because
yes.
It can be pretty tough. But it sounds like you're doing all the right things, and I'm very interested to hear how you're progressing through this. From my vantage point, you are at least halfway through. So hopefully something great will come up, and it'll be good for your career.
Yeah, Jonathan, it's interesting how you talk about the toughness of the job search. One of the things I do as I approach the search is I approach it as a full-time job, but a full-time 4-day-a-week job. And on this, so Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm out there actively looking for work. And on Wednesdays, I grab my backpack and head into the mountains.
That's smart.
Because that gives me, that's what gives me life and gives me joy and recharges me to get back into the fray and just keep grinding away.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds very smart, really. Almost, better than sort of working half time for 5 days or 6 days. That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate you sharing that. And yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of experts in our, so we can call it program or event. And we're great as experts, but we're not in it the way that you are. So I think your perspective is really terrific, and we're psyched to have you here. Okay, so let's get to the part of the matter. How did you actually get your most recent job, and how are you going about your job search now? One of the things that we advise people Hi, Dan. Hi, Supriya. All right, great. Now we're starting to see people say hi, so terrific. Thanks. One of the things that we advise people, and that is a natural, normal place to start, is creating your resume. Now, creating your resume has a few advantages. One of the things is obviously you need to have a document that you can share with people that may interview you, but also kind of refines your thinking about what it is that you have to offer the market and what it is that you're interested in. Both of those things come up in the course of that. Now, you put together a resume. What's next?
Well, it's interesting. It's actually put together a lot of resumes. So what I did is I started it, which is I violated every rule in the book and I wrote a 5-page resume. And the goal of the 5-page resume is to kind of categorize what I did for every single job. And it provides me with a library that I can draw on, because ultimately at the end of the day, you want a resume that reflects what they're looking for, that highlights the skills and experience that they're looking for. So for me, I have a 2-page resume and a 5-page resume, and the 2-pager gets recalibrated for every opportunity. Now, the way I got the 2-pager is interesting. The first thing I did is I took 3 job descriptions and I went through with a highlighter and highlighted and circled all the key words and skills. And you do a couple of these and you start to find, okay, there's some commonalities in terms of what people are looking for. So I took that, created the 2-page resume for that. And then I had taken on my sabbatical a design thinking class from my DO, who's kind of the granddaddy of design thinking. And part of that methodology is fast iteration and fast prototyping. So what I did is I took the resume, I found 3 HR people from my network, and I asked them to go pick apart the resume. Then after they picked it apart, I made the changes. I made the changes that made sense. And then I sent it to another 3 people to look at it and pick at it as well. So by the time I got to that customizable 2-page resume, I've been through 2 rounds of feedback from 6 HR people. And that really, really tightened it up, because what happens is some people focus on the mission statement. Some people focus on the action verbs. Some people focus on the summary. Some people focus on, do you have things quantified in the resume? By having a lot of people look at it in sequential rounds of feedback, it was really able to tighten up that resume.
I love that. I love that idea that it's a living document. Sorry, Jonathan, did you want to?
No, I'm agreeing. I think it's great to get feedback, and I think it also speaks to the truth. And I think you're insightful. You don't need to go through the job search process alone. Get feedback.
Yeah, and it's a living document, right? So it's not just, oh, well, let me send my resume out to these different people, but it actually is something that can be an anchor for the search. And one of the things that strikes me is it gives you the opportunity to network with people on a level that's deeper than you have something for them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it allowed me to go out to a half dozen HR people and discreetly say, I'm on the market.
Right. Yeah, there you go. That's a good one. There's a networking trick for you guys.
Yeah.
All right. And I think that's part of this as well. It's close. So interview prep.
Yeah. So for this, interview prep is an interesting thing, because you go on the web and you Google top interview questions, or go somewhere like, a reputable source like LinkedIn. There are all sorts of question lists out there. So I actually took a top 50 list off of LinkedIn, and I went and I wrote answers to every single question. After you do the first 20, the questions start sounding similar, but still drafted it to refine the answers. I would go for walks and I'd practice the answers orally, because the way you write something, the way you say it can be different. And ultimately your interview is going to be oral. And then looking for different ways of practicing it. So, there's online forums like Lunch Club, where you just get together and meet random people. That's a great way of pitching yourself and learning to get your pitch down and take questions. Professional events, you go to networking events, meet up, because everyone you meet is like, hi, who are you? What do you do? That's a chance to practice pitching yourself. And then also practicing with hiring managers and HR people that non-HR professionals. Like, we've all worked for a manager, and managers by definition hire people and know what to look for in interview. So just going back to an old manager and saying, hey, can I get 15 minutes to do a mock interview? I have been surprised through all of my job searches how generous people have been with their time when you politely ask and you're flexible. Yeah. So strongly encourage people to get out there, practice. And you might be surprised by some of the feedback, because the feedback may not be about the specific things in the way that you answered, how do I, what are my strengths and weaknesses? For me, for example, the feedback came that my stories are too long. I love to tell stories, but the stories are on the border of too long. It's like, shorten your stories and make them want more, make them ask for it. And so like, okay.
Yeah, and I on the, by the way, I put Lunch Club in case people missed it. Lunch Club's a website that connects people, professionals from all different fields. You sort of have some choices about your interests, and then they will connect you, and you'll have a conversation for, I think it's an hour. And the conversations are wide ranging with a variety of different people. That's how Doug and I actually met. And, you know, a lot of times the conversations go nowhere, but it's good to talk with people, right?
You know,
I mean,
they could end up on a podcast.
practice. Yeah. There you go. Is that how you got that too?
Well, that's how we ended up here. I think there's been another podcast. It wasn't
Oh,
the
okay,
Max, it was another podcast that actually came out of one of the Lunch Club events. But it's a great way. It's a great way.
Yeah, some really interesting people there, and you know, and non-professionals. If you're interviewing with them, I kind of put my finger on the scale there with point number 2, because I interview people, and I interview people that are not where I am. I am not technically competent in the areas that they are. So they need to break things down and make it simple for me. Also recognizing that it shouldn't be too simple, right? So being able to speak to your audience, I think, is really important. All right. So job boards, what do you do with them?
Yeah, job boards are kind of the bane of my existence. You know, you can be candidate number 256 for this position, but it's something that you have to do, because there's jobs, because some of the jobs are posted there, and that's the only way you have insight into the jobs, because your network's not hitting it. So for me, the process is setting up alerts on all the major job boards: LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed, you know, Match, Dice, depending on your industry. But setting up the alerts, refining the alerts, so you're not getting these daily emails full of junk that's not relevant. And then matching your resume to the job posting. There's tools out there like JobScan, and Indeed's got it as well, where you can upload the job description, and you can also upload your resume, and it tells you how closely you match. It tells you what keywords are missing off of there. So the goal would be to make sure that the resume you're submitting very closely matches what they're asking for in the job description. And if you have a cover letter, you should always try it. It gives you another opportunity to sell. I know it's a pain to write cover letters for every job, but if you go through the major points in the job posting and make sure your cover letter hits maybe the top 3 or 4, again, it's another way to pitch you. And if you're really interested in the job, the beauty of LinkedIn is you can start tracking down the people who are the hiring managers and the C-suite who are in charge of that. So for example, in my case, one of the jobs I applied for last night, it said, you know, that this person will report to the chief communications officer. So I found her on LinkedIn and dropped her a message saying, hey, I overlap your job description 20 out of 20 points. We really should have a conversation about this. So we'll see.
All right.
I think that's really insightful. Another great value is when you look at enough jobs, you kind of get a feel eventually, Doug, for what people are looking for. Gives you a sense of what's going on in the market, so that you know you don't feel like you're the last person standing out alone in the field. But wow, there's a lot going on here. And that can be helpful in the interview process.
You mentioned a website. I think this was it. JobScan.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's competitors out there, and it's one of the built-in features for Indeed.
Oh, okay.
But you basically upload your resume, you upload the job description, and it tells you how an applicant tracking system is likely to score your resume against the job, and where the holes are. And sometimes it's minor things, like you wrote account-based marketing on your resume and the job description says ABM. So you just have to do some minor textual changes. And sometimes there's a couple of key skills that they're looking for that you're missing. And this is where you go back to the 5-page resume and you extract those bullet points from your history or something that looks like it to narrow that match and try to get farther past the ATS.
Wow. I just realized that we are getting close to our time. So anybody that needs to go, you feel free. We're going to stay here. We're going to actually push through this and see, because some of these points are really important and I don't want to gloss over them. So networking events and networking. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, as an introvert, they're painful, but they're necessary. And so for me, I've been going to probably one networking event every week, every other week, professional event. So for example, where am here in Oregon, there's the Technology Association of Oregon, the Oregon Entrepreneurs Network, there's Magnet, there's meetups about AI. Once you start digging in, there's actually a lot of places to go start meeting people who are in the businesses and industries that you're interested in. And so as an introvert, I always go, and I always have a goal that I will not leave until I meet at least 5 new people.
Wow.
And for me,
introvert, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, but I'm learning how to walk up to a group of people and say, "Hi, I'm Doug. Who are you?" And here we go.
Yeah.
And with the groups, for me, the goal of these is to come out with at least 1 or 2 people to have an individual meeting with.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, coming out of them, I have captured contact info of 1 to 2 relevant people out of everything, and set up subsequent one-on-ones with them. And, for these one-on-ones, I usually spend 15 to 30 minutes preparing. I'll actually write up a little document, the top of it says connection point, which is some way of connecting with them, either referring back to the event or something I saw on their resume that, overlaps with me. And then I'll have 10 questions to ask them. It's really easy to come up with 5 questions to ask people. To get 10 questions, you have to really dig into their profile and their company, really get inside their head. I just find that really, really helps the conversation. You won't necessarily use the questions in the interview, but it gives you enough background that you can have a conversation that flows. And of course, the last question that you always ask in one of these meetings is, so who else should I talk to?
Oh, that's better than what I was thinking is, how can I help you?
That's the question before.
That's great. Yeah. No, that's excellent. One of the things that I'm picking up here, I guess it's really no surprise, is this is all about talking to people and networking. All of it that you're talking about,
And I think the more senior you are, the more important it is to meet people face to face to get, to evoke advocacy. You want the person to be vested in you, and meeting them face to face accomplishes that in a way you just can't do online.
Yeah, absolutely. But don't write off online. In the last search, I actually had success and got interviews by cold calling CMOs. So I was a hardware guy wanting to move into software. So I started finding CMOs of software and SaaS companies in Portland using LinkedIn. And I just send them a note on LinkedIn saying, hey, I'm moving from this industry to where you are. Can you have 15 to 20 minutes to talk about what you are and what you do? Because the people who are getting recruited for software and SaaS CMO positions are the people who have that job today. And a lot of them are happy in their job. And so I actually got a number of referrals from other CMOs to jobs, to recruiters, to other people by just cold calling people off of LinkedIn.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And now comes a topic near and dear to our hearts.
Yes.
How to deal with recruiters.
I think, go ahead.
No, tell us.
Well, I'll tell you my perspective from the outside, and I'd love to hear what you're feeling about it on the inside. I think there's 3 ways you can do this. The lowest yield is the website resume submission. Every headhunter has got a link that says candidates, submit your resume here. That's really low yield, but you got to do it to get into the database because there might be a match. One level up of that is cold calls off of LinkedIn. I built a list of all the executive recruiters in Portland, and I systematically work my way through contacting them. Some of them will talk to you, some of them won't. But every one that you get, it's a win and it gets you one step closer. And the best way is referrals. And the referrals and some of my best executive recruiter referrals have come from executive recruiters. So someone going like, you know what, I'm really a specialist in the food and beverage industry, but since you're tech, go talk to Bob.
Yeah.
And they'll give me a referral to Bob. And so referrals are always the best way to get into it. And again, you're going to have to put yourself out there and work it.
That's why you get all my oil and gas people, Jonathan.
Absolutely.
That's true. Well, the best ones, not all of them. Trust me.
Yes.
All right. And the drum roll, please. The punchline. How did you find your last position, Doug?
I said, look, I'm going to look 6 months full time, and then I'm going to start taking on consulting gigs. I actually went back to a high school buddy who had a consulting gig that he needed to give up because he needed to move on. And he was really professional about it. He didn't want to just go like, hey, guys, I'm quitting. I'm out of here in 2 weeks. He wanted to go and say, I'm leaving, and here's a qualified person who can step into my shoes. So I was in the interview with the CEO for this consulting gig, And we're halfway through the conversation. He goes, you know, Doug, I have an open role for a VP of marketing. Why don't you just interview for that and take that? And it wasn't on any job boards. It hadn't come up in any of my networking. It wasn't on their website. It was sitting on his desktop. And I got that last role, which was a dream job. It was a perfect position for me, just because I went to a high school buddy and said, hey, can I have that consulting gig that you're giving up?
Fantastic. It's a great story. And I don't think it's that uncommon. You know, the most of the positions that people take come through some kind of networking, some kind of personal connection or professional personal connection.
Mhm.
Is that what you found as well, Jonathan?
All the time. So the people I counsel through this, and honestly, Doug, after this, I may call you and ask you some very pointed questions. I had two people struggling. Their greatest successes come from personal and professional contacts that they've reached out to independent of the job boards. The job boards have let them know what's happening in the market, so that gives
Yeah.
them a range of what's going on. But in the end, Doug, they're doing what you did. They're going to events, meeting people and calling them. And what I do is I say you need to ruthlessly access your network, but you need to be careful about network fatigue. And so reaching out to people the way you did to a friend and letting serendipity, letting luck happen, that's where it's very helpful to avoid false positives and false negatives.
Mhm.
Having a couple of people you trust that you can say, hey, look, my high school buddy wants me to be the VP of marketing. Looks like a good deal. What do you think? And I really
Right.
encourage people not to do their job searches alone for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. So congratulations on finding that job. I hope that you find your next one very quickly.
Yeah.
We'll go to some questions here as well. I had a bit of a tech glitch. I don't know if anybody saw that, but I see one question here. If there are others, so I'll pitch that one out to you guys. But if there are others, then Jonathan, you may see them and let me know, and you could put them in the comments here or down the slide here. So Laura asks how to avoid ageism.
Mhm.
All right, who wants to take that one?
I mean, I'm going to jump in because John Firth has a whole group built around this problem, which is the professionals over 50 group, because life is different. So when you look at jobs and careers when you're in mid to late stage, it is different. I also have candidates that have tried everything in the world to avoid being screened out for a great job that they want because they appear to have too much experience, which is the euphemism for ageism. The bottom line is there's no way around it. You are who you are, embrace it, go with it. You need an inspired leader to work with, especially if you're fairly senior. So honestly, I would allow the process to self-select. The only way to actually avoid it is to not go through applicant tracking systems. So do what Doug said so brilliantly earlier in this call. Find someone at the firm where there's a job posted somewhere and reach out to them independently on LinkedIn or call them, or find someone to make that introduction and avoid the applicant tracking system all the way through.
All right.
Yeah, John, as I've kind of grappled with that question, I've done a couple things. One is, I've done the traditional take off your first job, take the dates off your college degrees. But the other thing which I've done is kind of come philosophically to if you're the type of company that's going to walk away from my experience and skills because I'm over 50, you're probably not the type of place I want to work.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it does bring up another question, which is a topic for maybe another day, which is the difference between doing a job search and doing a career search.
Mm-hmm.
And I have great empathy for people who need to get a job. And it's a very different process than if you have the time. So Laura, depends on kind of where you are in your process for this.
Mm-hmm.
But all due respect, you need to find someone that will respect you for who you are, hire you for who you are. And if you need a job, then that's a slightly different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Good. I don't see any other questions here. I don't know if you see any, Jonathan.
No, but I do have one.
Please go ahead.
So I have a client for whom the number of jobs and where he wants to go work have become drastically limited. He's getting a lot of interviews, but then he's not getting hired, mostly because he probably has too much experience. So he's getting a lot of interviews. His resume is perfect. His reach outs are perfect. His online presence is perfect. When he shows up, he interviews very well. but he's not getting through the final hurdle because I'm not sure if it's Laura's comment or not, but he simply has too much experience and he can't find his way around it. And it's frustrating. Any insights there?
Well, can I ask a clarifying question, and then we'll let Jason give his expert response here? Is there's what is he asking for a salary that's too high for the position?
No, he's applying for in the M&A space for a director of M&A or a director of corporate strategy. Probably he's a managing director level.
Mm-hmm.
So he's probably at what those jobs would have paid in a large company like a Schlumberger.
Mm-hmm.
And then if he tries to go to any smaller company, his past comp is a hurdle, but the depth of his experience seems to be the bigger hurdle.
All yours, Jason.
Oh, well. I don't know. I don't know if I have a 10-foot pole around here.
I mean, actually, Jason suggested something he is doing. You suggested he try consulting, and that is now partly what he's doing. If you have any other ideas, Jason, I'm open.
Yeah, well, obviously there's a consulting route. There's taking a gig and trying to leverage that into a position. If he's getting the interview, if it's not his resume, he's getting the interview, then I think he needs to express his flexibility in those conversations in a way that's palatable to the people. I mean, the people that he's interviewing with, to some degree, I think it holds with what Doug was saying earlier, which is that if they don't value his experience, then it's not a good fit. I think there's something to that. But I've found, particularly by Supriya, in particular with compensation more than title, at least that's been my experience, is that there's a way to present yourself that allows you to kind of share what you've made and what you're looking for, but also express a flexibility. This happened just yesterday. There's a guy who's making probably twice what we're offering, but he sees growth in the position that we're bringing to the table. Ultimately, I don't think he's going to be the right candidate, but he convinced me at least to put me in front of my client and talk to them about him, despite the fact that he's over 50 and last year he's doing, he did twice what this job pays. Now, this is a sales position. I'm sure that surprises you. And he's a very good salesperson. But, nevertheless, I mean, it is doable, I think. Now, whether he'll get the job is a different question. But I think he's at least getting past my screen. So, all right, good. With that, thank you all very much for coming today. Thank you in particular, Doug, for coming to our forum today, for sharing your experiences. We wish you the best of luck with your current job search. We will help you if we can.
Absolutely.
Hopefully this get you some exposure maybe and another networking contact, but you at least got two in this room, if nobody else, me and Jonathan. So thanks again. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.